Peace be with you, friends. Peace be with you this morning, and welcome to worship with the Congregational United Church of Christ in Ashland, Oregon. I'm Reverend Christina Kukuk. I'm the senior minister here at Ashland UCC, and I am so glad to be connected together this morning. I am minister here together with all the people of the church, some of whom we actually got to see this morning for our very limited in-person prayer service, which usually happens the first Sunday of the month. And we actually got to see one another from a distance, masked, and it was really a lovely thing. I have just a couple of announcements before we continue with worship this morning. And one of them is that this is the last Sunday before Lent begins. We would often be in the sanctuary having a really good time with the Information Jazz Club and celebrating Mardi Gras. We're still celebrating this transition, and to help you make the shift into Lent, we have some Lent packets available, some Lent to go packets, so you can keep Lent at home. They will be outside the back of the church on Tuesday and Wednesday, February 16th and 17th, and there are hours in the bulletin that you should have received yesterday in the email, but from 9:30 to 11:30, and then again from 1 to 4, you can swing by the church and pick up those Lent to-go packets. There's some sweet treats in there, as well as a devotional reflection for the season, and an order of service for our evening Ash Wednesday Zoom worship service, prayer service. It'll be about 30 minutes that we'll do on Zoom at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evening. So all those things will be in the packet. And there are some packets, especially for families with smaller children. And then there are some packets for all ages. And we hope that you will take advantage of that to journey together through this season. Our Parish Life team is sponsoring a Zoom coffee hour on Thursdays. You can find a link to that to join in. It's just chat time to connect with each other during the week. So you want to check out that link here. The sabbatical committee's been working hard and continues to work hard to prepare and plan and share with you some of the exciting things that we have in store for our parallel renewal leaves, which will start toward the end of March, beginning of April, and happen for about 4 months. Some really fun things are in store for the congregation as well as for our family. And we're going to share the news in a special sabbatical edition of the newsletter. So keep an eye out for that. Next Sunday, we'll have a guest preacher. I'm really delighted that Reverend Tyler Connolly, who's our conference minister, will be in our Zoom pulpit. He'll be sharing a word with us next week, so please don't miss that. 10 a.m., same time, same place. And in the afternoon, I'm hosting a newer to UCC coffee conversation over Zoom. Again, if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. There are a lot of other announcements in the e-bulletin that you should have received yesterday, so please check it out. You'll see in there about the Book of the Month Club, other offerings from Adult Ed, Pro Future Faith series that has been streaming. There are notes about things going on in the life of the church so that you can hold your siblings in prayer. Links to find the Taizé services that Kathy Barker is creating new with the Taizé team each week. Ways to connect with Justice and Witnesses work in our community, the Winter Shelter, for example, as well as other efforts for justice in our world. So please check out that e-news. We're really grateful for everybody who's continued to share their gifts, to continue the ministry of Jesus that has happening through us. And there are ways you can do that online, through texting. If you have questions about that, Linda Anderson is the person who can help as well as TG in the office. And if you are in need in this season, and a lot of people are encountering need, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to the office, because we have access to resources within the church, as well as sometimes ideas for those outside of the church. During the worship this morning, you're invited to share your prayers during the prayers of the people in the chat, if you'd like. Those prayers we hold in confidentiality. They don't go out there on the World Wide Web. Just those who are in worship this morning will see them. And we invite you to offer your prayers as if you feel comfortable. Our last and most important announcement is whoever you are and wherever you are joining us from this morning, wherever you are on life's journey, you are beloved from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes. And we're so glad to be connected together in the Spirit in this way. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, if you'd like, right where you are, as Bob leads us in the call to worship.
Welcome to church. Not a place, but an invitation. Not a building, but a connection. Not a service, but a way of serving. Not an institution, but a path to adventure. In this new year, we gather at Jesus' invitation. Come and see what the kingdom is like. Come and see the water that pours out new life. Come and see the bread that is broken for the world. Come and see the people who trust in hope. Come and see the one who acts for justice. Come and see the place where heaven meets earth. Come and see the one who calls us by name. Six days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead.
If you knew that you would die today and you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that love can break your heart when you're down so low you cannot fall, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses and how much regret? What chain reaction would cause an effect? It makes you turn around. It makes you try to explain. It makes you forgive and forget. It makes you change. Knowing right but being wrong, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would find a truth that brings a pain that can't be soothed, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses and how much regret? What chain reaction would cause an effect? Makes you turn around. Makes you try to explain. What makes you forgive and forget? What makes you change? Are you so upright that you can't be bent if it comes to blows? Are you so sure you won't be crawling? If everything you think you know makes your life unbearable, would you change? Would you change? If you've broken every rule and vow, and hard times come to bring you down, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would die today, if you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? Would you change?
top of the mountain, respite from the crowds, away from the demands, no forewarning, suddenly changing, face radiant, immediate terror, grasping minds, understanding failing, reality or unreality, ancestral appearances, talking, babbling, clarity, intimate message, overshadowing cloud, then no one there.
I invite us to open our hearts to what the Spirit might be saying to us, using that embodied prayer that we've used a few times these weeks of physical distancing. Now I invite us to join in that embodied prayer by inhaling and reaching our arms up toward the sky, like a child toward a parent. Exhaling. Extending our arms to either side, remembering how Jesus connects us to one another. We inhale, breathing in, recognizing the Spirit within us, and exhale, breathing out to recognize the Spirit in others and in all creation. One more time without speaking. That second reading you just heard of Bob offer comes from a worship resource. Some folks, many of them Scottish, who put together a worship resource called Spill the Beans. And they, inspired by the very strange, sparkly story in our gospel this morning, composed an acrostic poem using the word transfiguration. That's the name of the story that we heard this morning. It's always the story in our churches on the Sunday before Lent. It's a story that is wild, and the folks at Spill the Beans help us enter into it with that acrostic poem, asking with us, reality or unreality? It's an experience of transfiguration, of transformation, of being changed. It's not only Jesus who is changed before the eyes of the disciples, but the disciples who are changed by the experience. And I thought this week that it would be neat to, as a congregation, do our own acrostic poems, maybe not using the word transfiguration, which is not a word we use in everyday conversation, but maybe using the word change. Or we could just as easily use the word Sabbath. Sabbath. If you were with us last week, you know that I started to share some of the spiritual practice of Sabbath keeping, partly as we near this renewal time together as a congregation, me for a sabbatical time, you to experience some renewal parallel with the similar themes as I am. We explored last week the practice of Sabbath and what it can do to transform an individual. But it's more than an individual experience. And in fact, as I said last week, individual wouldn't even be comprehensible to those in the ancient Near East who first gave us this gift of Sabbath. And when I think about Sabbath, I can never think about Sabbath without thinking about Karl Barth. Karl Barth was an early last century theologian. I know, I'm not the only, Not too many people think of Karl Barth when they think of the Sabbath, but the reason that I can't help thinking about Karl Barth is because that Barth wrote at a time when he really, really, really wanted to see Christianity change. It needed to change. Because at the time that he was plumbing the depths of thinking about God and living with God and believing and trusting in God, it was 1934. And the Protestant church was trying to come to terms with the Third Reich, a name you probably have heard before. Karl Barth was largely responsible for writing the Barmen Declaration in 1934. That was the declaration that rejected the influence of Nazism on German Christianity by arguing that the church's allegiance, the allegiance of people who follow Jesus, is not to the state or to an emperor or any other lord or power. And it was the Barmen Declaration that gave many people the resources to resist the influence of what was happening in Europe at the time. Barth mailed that declaration to Hitler personally, which is, I think, a bit of moxie. And it was that declaration that helped the confessing church find their identity apart from what was taking over Europe. Barth, of course, was forced to resign from his professor job at the University of Bonn in 1935 for refusing to swear an oath to Hitler, and he returned to Switzerland, where he was born. But his impact stayed because he kept writing a lot about what our faith means for how we treat others in this world. He wrote a lot. Sometimes we call him Saint Voluminous because this is just 1/14 of his church dogmatics, his exploration of theology about what Jesus means for us now. And what really struck me when I was studying Barth was that this volume, the one that is about creation, the doctrine of creation, he calls it, is his theology of ethics, Christian ethics, how we treat each other and the world we live in. And what surprised me about that is that he starts with the practice of Sabbath. All of Christian ethics, he says, begins with Sabbath. Now, he goes a lot of places in his theologizing that I don't go, and that will seem strange and unhelpful to us today. But I go back again today, this week especially, to starting and grounding our ethics, our moral compass in the practice of Sabbath. Because Sabbath rhythms for Barth guarded against exploitation of humans, of animals, and of earth's gifts. And most importantly, Sabbath practice guards against the exploitation of our human power for evil. The Sabbath is a day for life. And letting go of our human control for just 24 hours, or in the day-to-day, just 10 minutes, or in our lives, 2 weeks out of the year, or maybe every 7th year. The Sabbath helps us receive rather than control. Abraham Joshua Heschel writes that the Sabbath is a day for life. It's not just there to improve our efficiency. It's for the sake of our life and the life of the planet. It is not an interlude, but the climax of living. It's not limited to wearing scratchy clothes or not getting to watch our favorite TV programs. Sabbath is a day to receive the gifts of our Creator and to share them. So that when you look at the roots of it, Sabbath practice extends even to the animals. Untie your oxen, let them graze wild. Release your servant, they too deserve a rest. Don't oppress the foreigner and the stranger among you. Heschel describes the expansion of this Sabbath ethic as the creation of a palace in time. It's a climate in which all things and all people might have life. Today's story about the shiny Jesus on the mountain, speaking with his faith ancestors, isn't a Sabbath story specifically. It is about transformation, a transfiguring moment. As Mark tells the story, Jesus calls these close disciples apart by themselves, up on a high mountain, a place where many of us meet God, the nature that I spoke about last week. In there, Jesus converses with Moses and Elijah, the ancestors of his faith, the two who most represent the prophetic call to justice and the Torah, the way of life. Of course, they don't stay there on the mountain. Jesus and the disciples come back down the mountain and are immediately confronted with sickness. They get back to the work of prayer and healing, of feeding and preaching and enacting that message that the time is now, the kingdom of God is near, and we are called to turn and trust it. It's not a Sabbath story specifically, but in many ways, this shining Jesus story is a little Sabbath moment. A Sabbath moment like all those Sabbath moments and Sabbath practices, which can transfigure us in ways that change our orientation to God, to one another, and to the world around us. Heschel writes that the offer of this free gift, a free gift that Judaism has given the world, might let us learn enough to halt the dramatic anti-neighborliness to which our society is madly and uncritically committed. Sabbath could save lives, beginning with our own, but extending to all creation. So I invite you, as this Lenten season begins on Wednesday, to reflect on how you might keep Sabbath in this season ahead. Some sliver of time, some palace in time to receive the gifts of life, to remember and live as if you are beloved, because you are, and to free up space to share that love, that belovedness with others and with all creation. May it be so in our lives this year. Amen.